Welcome to the IAM Power Hour, where personal growth meets empowerment.
I'm Terry, and we're here to inspire, challenge, and help you transform your mindset.
And I'm Stacie. Today we're going to be talking about when leaders bully and how we navigate parenting in this ever-changing world, plus everything in between.
So let's get started and let's ignite the power in you.
Welcome back to the IAM Power Hour, and we're here today going to be talking about a very interesting subject on bullying. But before we get into that, I do want to touch base because, Terry, I feel like I haven't seen you all week. What has been going on, my friend?
Oh, wow, it's been a crazy, crazy week. And you know what, Stacie? After we did that last episode on doom scrolling, I ended up doing my first real training on doom scrolling, and it went fantastic. But it was really hard for me because, on doom scrolling, when we were talking about it, we were going, doom scrolling. It was hard for me to not do that in my training session. And I think I did anyway. I was like, welcome to doom scrolling.
It's just a way to, add suspense to the training that you had.
I think it did, but we ended it up with the power of joy, joy, joy down in our heart.
Good.
How about you? How was your week?
My week was full of some really great things as well. I took my joy scrolling to heart and got out and, spring is in the air and started my setting up my garden for the year, which I'm very excited about. And funny little story, I don't know what I was thinking, right? Because you never really kind of, I guess, think in the moment. So I ordered a bag of vegetable mix soil for my garden, right? For my raised bed gardens. And I ordered it online and I got to the place to pick it up. And I guess it didn't register in my head how heavy 1,500 pounds,
Oh my gosh.
especially of dirt, actually is.
Oh
It
my
came
goodness.
it came in one big bag. And I probably should have been a little concerned when they had to load it into the back of my truck with the forklift. And
Oh
the
my
whole
goodness.
back of my truck went. And I was like, okay. So for the past week and a half, I have been driving around with this big bag of soil in the back of my truck, and I've been slowly shoveling it out into a wheelbarrow, right, and taking it back to my um, garden. And yesterday I was very excited. So I went over to a friend's house and I was just like, look, I got this soil. Let me give you some of it so I can get this bag out of the back of my truck. So I emptied probably about half of what I had left in there. Was all proud, came home. Oh, I'll be able to get this off. No, darn thing wouldn't move. So what I winded up doing is backing up to one of my trees and using my cinches, right, wrapping it around the tree, connected it to the bag and pulled forward and watched that thing flip off the back of my truck into the front yard. And then I thought, great, maybe I'll be able to use my riding lawnmower and pull it into the backyard. Nope, it's
Too
still
heavy
sitting.
for it?
Huh?
Too heavy for the riding mower?
Too heavy for the riding mower. Yeah, I took off on the riding mower and it like almost popped a wheelie and didn't even move. So it's still sitting in the front yard.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
So I'm hoping that this weekend somehow I'll be able to shovel more out into my wheelbarrow and wheel it over there and kind of start laying out some of my gardening. If as long as the rain holds off, we're supposed to be getting some rain, which is why my hair is in a hat today. Having a little bit of a bad hair day just because of the weather, but all in all, it's been kind of a very adventurous week, I will say, especially when it comes to soil. Never knew it would
Sounds
be so bothersome. Yeah.
sounds like it. I had to take a tree down and I have a big area of mulch and everything. And I had to move all of that because I decided I'm tired of replanting trees.
Yeah.
So I moved all that mulch back to the back, and I was hauling that back and forth with a wheelbarrow, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, I am just so tired." Not being used to it. But I am absolutely sure, Stacy, that you will figure out a way to finish this off. But at least by even being able to get it off of your truck is a good thing.
Well, I will tell you, talking about calling things, um, today has probably been the first day in probably about 5 days that I am not sore. Like I could sit down without the back of my leg screaming
Oh
at
wow.
me or my biceps going, "What have you been doing?" Because you haven't done this in a while, right? So my body's going, "Oh yeah, it's spring. What's going on? Why are you moving so much?
You
We're coming
know,
out of hibernation. We got to get moving."
That's right. And that's the thing we all need to be doing. And we've been talking about that in the previous shows with mindfulness and getting out and smelling the roses, if you will, and being mindful of the power of now. But it looks like you took matters into your own hands, and I'm very well known
Literally.
for doing that too. So
Yes, literally into my own hands. Yeah. So it's going to be quite the spectacle today and tomorrow, trying to get that into the back of my yard. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Good times.
I am
Always
sure
good
you will
times.
find out a way to be innovative enough to do that. And if all else fails, hit control alt delete and take a nap.
That's right. So just
And then
submerge
maybe ask
me.
for help. You never know. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you've had a phenomenal week and one that you've had to really think and be innovative and find out new ways of doing things. And, in the words of my mentor, Dr. Wayne Dyer, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, and just being more innovative
That's
and
true.
taking a
Yeah.
step back and saying, okay, how can I reassess this and come at it maybe from a different angle and using your cinches and the tree.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Certainly
I can tell you
creative.
all the neighbors that drove by was driving by really slow because I think they were trying to figure out what is she doing? So I was wrapping it around the tree and, coming back to the car. Yeah, it was
Wow. Wow.
quite the spectacle.
Well, Stacy, let's dive into this topic today because we sure have a lot to cover. Do you not agree? But you know what? In
Yes.
times of this, in these challenging times of fear, division, power struggles that are dominating the headlines, as parents, as educators, as leaders, what are we sending? What kinds of messages are we sending to our children? I do a lot of positive parenting techniques and things like that, but I think today we want to dive into what is going on out there and even the dismantling of the Department of Education.
Don't even get me started on the dismantling of the Department of Education.
And
I
it's
am
just one of the things that are being dismantled, but it's only one of the things that we can cover in this episode.
I am so furious over what is happening in our administration and the Department of Education just irks me to no end. I mean, when I saw this, I again yelling at the TV, wanting to know what in the world our administration is talking about because I cannot even fathom how anybody could support this because of the services and the support that it provides for our children who are our next leaders.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
I don't
And
get it.
there's a lot of things, you know, there are a lot of things that are happening, and it's happening so rapidly. People are losing their jobs, and, in health and human services, all across, Social Security now, the Department of Education, all of these things are happening so rapidly that we're not even having time to even take a breath before something else has blown up. But today, I want to focus on the Department of Education in this first part of our show today and what that actually means for any and all of us. So, if you're a parent, if you're an educator, a teacher, I know that you know what that means, but there are a lot of things that, with the dismantlement of this, that are going to be happening that we really, really need to be aware of. And one of the things that this is going to that's going to happen with this dismantlement is that it's going to weaken protections under the laws for individuals with disabilities. And the Federal Department of Education actually supports students with disabilities and even those who are in high poverty areas. And so just losing that or weakening those protections. I have friends who have children who are autistic. This is going to be affecting of that. ADHD. I do a lot of trainings even on neurodiversity. And with that, this dismantlement is going to weaken these laws and everything that it's taken years and years to get into place, and just with the stroke of a pen, these things are going to be weakened or potentially even disappear.
I've seen a few clips on about this dismantlement, and I know it was established under President Carter back in
Mm-hmm.
the 70s. And I'm not saying that America, right, is the best in education. I'll go ahead and admit that we're not when it comes to like the world, right? We're not the best in our education system. But instead of dismantling it, right, why aren't we going in and trying to fix it? I mean, to dismantle it and then say, well, the states are going to take it over. Well, as a taxpayer, right, for my state, that means my state taxes are probably going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my federal taxes will go up, my state taxes will go up, which I don't think our states, right, have the capacity to handle such a large department. Everything's now wants to be pushed to the states, to the states, to the states. And that I think is just going to overburden the states too. And is that going to be beneficial for us?
And I talked at one point in time, sometimes it's not about starting over, but it's about how we can make something better. And you cannot dismantle something that has been in place and millions of people depend upon, including teachers and bus drivers and uh, people who fix their food, and providing those free lunches. I've worked in mental health, and some kids, that's the only meal that they got, during the day. So all of these things are going to begin to happen. And instead of just tearing it completely apart and throwing caution to the wind, what have you got to replace that? What have you got to enhance that? And from what I see, there's there's no ideas of how any of that's going to be enhanced. And the other issue, and there's a lot about that's going to be happening with this dismantlement, but even with that, potential programs such as Head Starts and then those free school lunches may end. And there are a lot of people that depend on that with Head Starts and things like that, to even lower income families, so that they help their children to have a place to go while they can go to work, but also their children are beginning to learn, and being prepared for school.
I gotta um, give it up to our teachers at this
Yes.
time. right, of what's happening right now. Because I
Yes.
remember when I was in school, right, my parents didn't have to pay for anything. Everything was provided, right? And then when my daughter was in school, I started to notice, oh, now we have to buy their paper and their pencils and their this, and we have to contribute to that. And, all through her school years. And now with friends who still have young kids, right, in school, I'm hearing that teachers are using their own money to help support their classroom because their funds to have done this, right, are just not there. So I don't understand how what this is really going to accomplish, because obviously you've already cut budget,
Yeah.
right, quite a
Yeah.
few years ago. What else are you going to do?
Yeah. And what are you going to do to, repair this? There's no semblance of anything. It's just destruction, divisiveness, chaos, fear, bullying, and there's no recourse of what is going to take the place of that, if anything, because there are no plans for what can take the place of that. Yes, yes, yes. Before anybody chimes in and says, oh, it's going to go to the states. But what are their plans? Do they have any plans? I mean, we're right in the middle of ending a school year and getting ready to start another one. Are they going to magically pull all this together in the matter of a couple of months? I'd say not. It takes years for them to move anything anyway. So what I want to lead into today is, the importance of understanding what can be happening to us, for us, or about us. And I want to talk a little bit too today about bullying, because I feel that this is exactly what is taking place right under our nose. And Stacie, we have been combating bullying for years on the playground or for our kids and things like that. All of these things have been happening, but now it's spread way beyond that. It's not just the children that are being bullied, it's all of us.
Yeah,
So,
and the sad part, it's coming from our upper leadership.
yes. And I'm not sure I can call that leadership, just to be flat out honest with you. But upper management, upper CEOs, upper whatever you want to call it, but leadership and that are two totally different things. And I don't believe that we have any leadership. No one is, at the helm. In the words of Lao Tzu, who is an ancient Chinese philosopher, he said, a leader is best when his work is done, his aim fulfilled, the people will say, we did it ourselves. Leadership helps to guide people, helps to move people in an inspiring, motivating, positive manner to help people to grow within themselves. So I want us to talk a little bit about bullying and how we can learn to combat that. What are the signs and symptoms of that? And I'm going to let you help us get ready for our first segment when we come back after the break.
Parenting today isn't easy. Disconnections, stress, and misunderstandings leave us feeling overwhelmed. Kids are struggling with stress, anxiety, and social pressures. As parents and educators, we need the right tools to connect. Bridging the Gap training by Terry J. Walker is here to help. A powerful program designed to build strong relationships between parents, educators, and children. Discover real tools to help children develop self-esteem, confidence, and emotional intelligence. Together, we can bridge the gap and create a brighter future. Join us today at bridgingthegaptraining.com.
You said you want to return education control to the states. How would you handle it if a state like California were to put in place education policies you disagree with?
Well, I think that California is going to be tougher because they're doing badly on everything they do. Everything they touch turns bad. So a place like California would be tougher for education, but What I would see with California is you'd have a Los Angeles department, and you'd have Riverside, you'd go to various places. And I think you'd have some great areas in California, and then you'd have some, like everything else, it doesn't work so well. But ultimately, I think it would be very successful. I think in New York, as an example, you'd go to Long Island, Westchester, you may have Nassau County, Queens County, you break it up in certain ways. So they'd have maybe 5 departments, because of the size, they'd have 5 departments instead of 1. A state like Iowa, you'd have 1. And I mean, they're just chomping at the bit to get going. So many states are chomping at the bit to get education, and it's going to happen fast, to get the education brought back to the states. And I mean, I tell you what, you have 40 states, in my opinion, that will be as good as Norway, Sweden, Denmark. You take a look at those 3 are top, among the top, and they've been there for a long time. But I think you'll have a lot. Finland is very strong. Frankly, China is very strong. China's in the top 10. And that's something considering the size, So it's not only a size thing. But Norway, Sweden have been very good. Denmark has been very good. I think you have Iowa and Indiana, and a lot of our states will be equal to them. But they can't be equal if it's going to be run in Washington.
Welcome back to the IAM Power Hour. I'm Stacie, and I'm here with Terry, and we just watched a clip on President Trump talking about how it won't be long before the states start to run the education process. And in this clip, he mentions that, right, they're going to take all the students' information from the federal government and ship it to the collective states, right? So all students listed in Iowa, all that information is going to be sent to Iowa, and basically Iowa's going to be like, okay, let's fix this.
Now what?
Yeah. Basically, now what? So this, I think, is since we're talking about bullying, and this is, I think, a really good example of just him going, this is what you're going to do, and I don't give 2 coins, to say it nicely, of what's going to happen, because now it's going to be the state's problem, and deal with it.
Yeah. And again, as I mentioned about a leader is best when his aim is fulfilled, and all of that, the people will say we did it ourselves, but there's nothing in here. There's no guidance. There's no resources. It's just throwing it off of my desk and making you figure it out. And again, this is how this chaotic administration has operated. I don't want to deal with it, so I'm going to throw it off of my desk, and you can handle it one way or another. And again, we have dealt with bullies on the playground with our kids and things like that. But I also do a lot of bullying trainings in the workplace. And there have been people who have worked had managers, supervisors, CEOs, whatever the case may be, that could be a bully. And I want to delve into what is a bully, because bullies aren't born, they are created. And I truly, truly believe this as we are growing up and understanding what an actual bully is, because a bully is someone who really has very, very low sense of self-worth. They live behind this suit of armor, and they try to make people believe that they are stronger, and they like to have audiences so that they can have some people kind of backing them up when they take advantage of someone else, whether that's someone who they may be perceived as weaker or less than, or whatever the case may be. But that is basically what a bully is. Someone who has intent to harm and also has an imbalance of power. And there are different forms of bullying: physical, verbal, emotional, social, and even cyberbullying. So tell me, Stacie, what are some of your thoughts on this?
Well, I'll just, as a young child, I remember in elementary school that there was, you had the popular kids, and then you had the non-popular kids, and then you had the kids that were kind of like me, that I wasn't really popular, but I wasn't necessarily on the other side, I would say, the fence. I just kind of knew everybody. But there were times where, I knew that some of the popular kids would bully those that they, didn't deem worthy, let's say.
Right.
And I was always one of those kids that would step in and go, look, if they don't want to be your friend, I'll still be your friend, right? Because I didn't want anybody not to have a friend because I always wanted to have friends. But with your description, I was doing some research on the subject today and found that, Trump has a biographer. He goes by the name of Mark Fisher, and goes on talking about his childhood, that he was a bully even in school,
Mhm.
and has tended to be a bully for his life. I mean, his autobiographer, right, is basically out there saying, "Oh yeah, he was a tyrant in school, and now that he's coming kind of back, as you say, into power and his balance of power." And I'm sure we've seen it all over the news about his mental state, should we say, being with narcissism and possibly a sociopath, is helping to lead to this bullying. And I believe he surrounded himself with other bullies to help him roll out his plan, for lack of a better word.
There's truly becoming an imbalance of power. And these people who are surrounding him are the wannabes, if you will. They want to be rich, they want to have power. And I said a long time ago, greed, power, and control. Greed, power, and control. And this is exactly the only thing that seems that they want. They want. And where are most wars fought over? Religion, greed, power, control, land. That's pretty much the concept. And so with that, what have we begun to fall into, or potentially fall in step or fall in line with some of these types of behaviors? You've got the physical bullying where people are hitting and pushing, that's physical. You've got the verbal bullying or emotional verbal abuse bullying where you're name calling, you're insulting, you're making derogatory remarks about people. How many times do we hear that on the media and when things come out of his mouth? If someone he doesn't agree with, he doesn't like someone that doesn't agree with him or does something separate from the way he feels, then they are no good. He's making derogatory statements about it. He's using that as cyberbullying, which is another form of bullying, by putting it out there through the media, through social media, through text, through emails, and digital platforms of all kinds. So he has hit every level of every part of these. Even the social bullying of spreading rumors, excluding certain groups, making public humiliation of people. Even now, and I'm not going to go down this road, but I do want to mention that even certain law firms are giving in or being bullied and discredited if they've ever gone up against him or anything he's wanted. So he is taking control of all of these types of things. And this is having a major, major impact. This intimidation tactics, using fear and control to influence others, money, greed to influence others, the public belittling, the mocking, the demeaning of individuals in public forums, the manipulation, distorting the facts or the events, and not maintaining any sense of accountability. None, none.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he definitely, I would say, not take accountability for a lot of things. And when we're talking about him being out there on social media and doing what he does, kind of going back to, right, our society, and bullies preying a lot on the uneducated. And because I know people see it on social media, and a lot of it that I kind of have to laugh at, but part of me I'm kind of, sad about that our own people here in America don't even realize they're just taking what he says at face value, right? And that, oh, that's law, that's correct, that they're not even trying to figure out, is it true? Is what he's saying factual? And that kind of does lead to, how can you not understand what a tariff is and how that's going to affect our economy? He's saying it's not going to, but we all know that it is.
How about those prices of eggs?
Yeah. Prices
And
of eggs,
food
right?
and everything else just getting higher and higher and higher. And so with that, I mean, and my big concern too is the job loss. Who's going to be able to afford if they don't have a job? Because all of these people in the government, and I do a lot of trainings about stress and fear and change and this potential job loss. How are they going to be able to afford any of these types of things? So
Or
this
the
is a lot of important things that we really need to be taking into consideration for our own selves and our own lives.
We're talking about job loss. Yeah, there's a lot of stress around people. Am I going to have a job? But what about all the veterans and federal workers that have already lost their jobs
Exactly. Exactly.
with no warning? Just, no, sorry, you're gone.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So with this, I wanted to bring this out today because I think it's very, very important that we take a look at things on a realistic level. Stacie, we've had conversations about being mindful. We've had conversations about taking care of yourself. We've had conversations about the power of now. We've had conversations about doom scrolling and what that can lead to. And maybe some of this information is right, maybe some of it is false. Whatever the case may be, are we taking the time to be more mindful and to understand what is really happening around us? Whether it's the bullying, whether it's the intimidation, the greed, the power, the control, the job loss, the fear. Instilling fear in people is a way to keep people pushed down. And we need to be the people who are willing to overcome that fear and rise back up. And by doing that, we become leaders. So are we those who want to be in that victim mindset that continuously be pushed down through this fear, this bullying, this intimidation? Or are we able to rise above that and become a true leader, not only for ourselves, but for those around us and our children, our future?
Yeah. I want to believe that the American people will rise up and say enough is enough, regardless of what side of the fence you fall on.
Yeah.
Because, we see it on social media, and there's a lot of jokes being made about what's happening in our world right now, in America. And there's a lot of posts out there that talk about, things we need to do. But it's also those leaders that are up on that level that make laws that need to stand up as well and rise up and not be bullied or scared that if I don't do what he says, oh, that's it, I'm over. I mean, us as a whole society needs to really pull together and say, no, enough is enough, no matter what he threatens, right? Is to stand up and take back our Constitution because we are the people. You know, we are the people.
You're supposed to be working for us.
You know, to form a more perfect union. I mean, if you don't know anything about our Declaration of Independence or our Constitution, I implore you to please take time to sit down and read it and become familiar with it and realize what is happening is not written anywhere in those things. And our rights, if we are not careful, will be taken away from us as Project 25, right? 2025. That's, I don't even want to get started on that thing, how it's going to take away rights of women and voting and giving ultimate power to, you know, the president. And if we're not careful, we are not going to be the America, the United States that our, as we say, forefathers fought for, because we fought to get out from underneath a dictatorship, right? England, the king, and have our own freedoms. And right now, it's all being taken away. Sorry, but it is. I'm off my soapbox. I'm done.
Well, but even over and above that, you know, pulling us away from our allies, you know, divide and conquer is exactly what's happening here. So we're being pulled away from our allies, England, Great Britain, you know, Spain, Canada.
Mexico.
I mean, all of these things. And then he's going after greed, power, and control, trying to take over Greenland or whatever it may be. And so with this being said, and what is so amazing about Greenland? Oh, underneath the ice, there are minerals. So this is not about, oh, I love the people of Greenland and I just want to help them out. This is about, I'm coming in and I'm going to destroy your country.
Yep.
You know, digging for these minerals and all of this type of thing. Greed, power, and control. This is exactly where we are. And we are in the midst of being bullied and people are backing down. But I'm hoping now that people are beginning to rise up to the occasion and not allow this to go on. Again, we have fought for our children for years, being bullied on the playground. All kinds of programs have come out about how to stop bullying. And yet now it's not our children, it's all of us.
Well, it starts from the top and works its ways down. If the president of the United States can be a bully, well, then why can't I?
Yes.
And I'm going to teach
get away with it, then why
right?
can't I? And so it's bringing out the worst in people as we continue to move along. And I can only hope that our show today brings out the best in people, to get people to start thinking, what can I begin to do to move forward in a more positive direction and help to lift myself up and in turn help lift those up around me.
Yeah. It's kind of like that saying that I know I think I've heard you say, that in times of uncertainty we must reflect. And are we fostering leaders or enabling bullies?
Exactly.
So I want you to think on that, and we'll be right back.
Parenting today isn't easy. Disconnection, stress, and misunderstandings leave us feeling overwhelmed. Kids are struggling with stress, anxiety, and social pressures. As parents and educators, we need the right tools to connect. Bridging the Gap training by Terry J. Walker is here to help. A powerful program designed to build strong relationships between parents, educators, and children. Discover real tools to help children develop self-esteem, confidence, and emotional intelligence. Together, we can bridge the gap and create a brighter future. Join us today at bridgingthegaptraining.com.
Hey, welcome back to the IAM Power Hour with me, Terry J. Walker, and my wonderful, wonderful co-host, Stacie Staton. And we have been talking about bullying, and we're going to talk about leadership. And so we have had this discussion about bullying, and both of us got, and about the Department of Education being dismantled and all of those types of things. But let's talk a little bit about leadership and what some of the qualities are that we need to look for within ourselves, because we all can create our own sense of leadership, whether we're working in a job, whether we're just being a leader with our friends and family, or even being a positive leader, role model, if you will, even with our children. So let's talk a little bit about what some of those qualities are, even for leadership, Stacie. I know that integrity is one of them, and being honest, being strong with some moral principles is a major leadership quality. But what are some others that you want to throw in there?
Well, empathy, I think, is one of my biggest ones for myself, right? I mean, I've been a leader, I've been in management before, and being able to lead not only with the head, but with the heart, and
Yes.
having empathy for those around you and what is happening. Like your decision doesn't just affect you, right? It's like a rippling effect, right? You throw a stone in the water and you see all these ripples. Well, that's what happens when you make decisions, right? It ripples out to the next person and the next person and the next person. And being able to be able to empathize with what's going to be happening to that person out on that edge ripple needs, I think, to be taken into consideration. And a good leader, you know, thinks about those things and brings people together to discuss, okay, this is what we're thinking about doing. Let's bring in these key stakeholders and see how is it going to affect, right, the overall picture, and is it going to reach the common goal? Not my goal, but the goal of how it should help everybody. So I think empathy is probably top on my list, and communication too.
Everybody, everyone being connected, bringing people together for a common goal, is always a good sign of a leadership. And you just nailed it, even with stating those things. But another thing is, and as you know, I worked with children in mental health. And I would have parents come into my office ready to do therapy, and they would say such things as, Terry, if my child has no reason to be here, and if it wasn't for Johnny or Susie down the street, or they started running around with that person, they wouldn't be here, and there's no need for them to be here. And the kid's sitting here listening to this whole thing. Nobody, nobody's accountable. And they're teaching their child to not be accountable. It's
Yeah.
blame, blame, blame. Playing the blame game, goes back to the bully mentality. But accountability is something that is a huge component to being a leader. Being willing to accept responsibility for your thoughts, your words, your actions, and your emotions. Being willing to be accountable for what you did, whether it was a success and taking recognition for that, or whether it was a failure and being accountable of, I made a mistake, but I am going to learn from this and make it better the next time.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of things can kind of go astray, right? Especially when it comes to our children and some parenting beliefs today. Because I know that I had a very good friend that was kind of on that way of never well, everything, let me just say that everything was an accident, right? Nothing was ever done on purpose, right? Her kids never did anything on purpose. It was an accident. It was an accident. So now that the children are much older, that mindset has gone with them, because now it's everybody else's fault.
Yeah.
Right? There's no accountability. They never learned that accountability, that, hey, I hurt you and I need to take accountability for that and tell you that I'm sorry and grow that empathy. but it was always, well, it was an accident, so you really don't have to worry about it. Right. But now there's like that price, right? The price that they're paying is now they have no accountability. So everything is somebody else's fault. Even
Yes.
if they, you know, got whatever it was, got in trouble. Well, no, it was somebody else's fault. Well, how could it be somebody else's fault? You're the one that did the action. Well,
Yeah.
no, it's, so and so did that. And
Yes. We're so quick
it's,
to point the finger and blame others. And
yeah,
that makes me think of that. I don't know if you remember that old show. I think it was called Family Ties.
with Michael
Get in
J.
there.
Fox.
No, that wasn't it. I can't remember. But it was had Urkel on it. You remember Urkel?
Oh,
Steve Urkel.
yeah,
And he
Urkel.
would say,
Yeah.
did I do that? And never being accountable, but just saying, I made a mistake. How hard is that? I made a mistake. And what can I learn from this to do better? How can I grow through this? Because no one knows everything. And if we are willing to give everything we believe, our values, our accountability over to someone else, then how are we going to continue to grow? So true leadership comes back to being accountable, having integrity, having empathy, having courage to stand up for what is right, even in the face of adversity.
Well, and it's also giving a voice to somebody else, right? Allowing them to speak their own voice. Because if you allow a bully to speak for you, you're just caving in, right? So that leader needs to be able to go, hey, I want you to speak up. I want you to tell me what I can do better, right? Speak up.
Yeah.
That's why we vote. Speak up.
While we still can. While we still can.
That's right.
You know,
69 million women may not be able to vote in the next election because of Project 2025. But I digress, and we will not go there.
yes, we're on leadership now. Let's
I
talk
know.
about leadership. No, but I
Kinda
would
took a
say
wrong
that-
turn. Bring it back.
Ooh, sometimes we got to run back in, but I absolutely love it. But
I know.
you are so very right. And this
As
is
I say,
exactly
my
what I
mistake.
said. Oh, are you being accountable?
I am.
See how easy that was?
Totally. It's not hard.
You were
As long
accountable
as
on the
it's
show.
heart, as long as it's heartfelt, right? People can tell you that, hey, I'm sorry all day long and turn around and do it again.
Yeah. Yes. But what am I sorry for? Even explaining that out. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what? Get down to the nitty-gritty of what you're sorry about. Explain it. I'm sorry that I took a wrong turn and I went back and I digressed because I said X, Y, and Z. That is so much more imperative of showing true leadership than just to say, hey, I'm sorry. Or, you don't have the right to feel that way because of what I said or whatever the case may be. People are just, pointing the fingers and so much anger and divisiveness. And you know what? I digress too. So with that, let's get on to leadership. But being accountable, having that integrity, and we've shown that even in real time to admit it right off of the bat, right here on the show. We both digressed, took a wrong turn, but we admitted it. So we're going to come back to leadership.
It's easy to do.
Having some empathy, understanding, awareness, and having the courage to overcome and to rise and thrive even within yourself. Everyone has unique skills and abilities. Everyone deserves to feel physically, emotionally, psychosocially safe in their workplace, in their communities, in their home, and in their neighborhoods. And that is what leadership is all about. You know, in the words of Mother Teresa, she said, I alone cannot change the world, but what I can do is cast a stone across the waters to create many positive ripple effects. And I usually add to that to say, may you, whoever's watching this today, cast another positive stone across the waters to create even more ripple effects. Because even at the beginning, you were talking about the ripple effect.
Mhm.
So let's make a leadership ripple effect by being honest, having our principles and standing up for them, being accountable and taking responsibility, being empathetic and sharing our feelings and understanding and well-being with others, and having the courage to stand up for what's right, even in the face of adversity. And then I'm going to add one more key topic to that, and that is LNT. LNT, simply having the willingness to learn new things and be open to new ideas and self-improvement for yourself. This are some of the key qualities to help enhance your leadership skills.
So, Terry, that's really good information, which we can then kind of incorporate into, strategies for parents right now, right? How can we
Yeah.
use these great strategies to help empower our parents to help our children, whether they're toddler all the way up to, I'm still my mom's baby, right? And I'm a 50-something-year-old adult, but even, what she can do to maybe even instill in me still um, of things that we could do to then in turn help my daughter, which could be, anything from modeling, the behaviors that we would like to see, making sure that we have open communication, um, being able to teach how to resolve a conflict, right? I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things that I think a lot of people struggle with is how can we get together and sit down and discuss our differences without having to fly off the handle, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Even as parents, we have our stress, we have our moments. None of us is perfect, but what are we role modeling even for our kids? Are they leadership qualities with that accountability, empathy, courage, and that willingness to learn new things? Are we role modeling this even for our kids, our teenagers, and even our young adult children, whatever the case may be, or our middle-aged adult children, whatever it is? But, being kinder and being more empathetic, but even teaching that conflict resolution, how can we sit down and have a calm, peaceful conversation? We may agree to disagree, but even being accountable for some of those things, and making sure that our children are aware of being accountable, but also even us being accountable for the mistakes that we may make.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think accountability is key in being able, like we just said, right? Being able to sit down and speak to each other calmly, and whether we agree to disagree, we can still walk away being able to have heard, because I am a big believer. Look, if you can change my mind on something, I will sit and listen to you. And I am pretty darn stubborn. Well, I mean, 100%. But if you can change
Ooh,
my
that.
mind, now careful there. But if you can change my mind, I will sit down and listen to you and give you the opportunity to see if you can change my mind. However, I want you to have the same open mindedness that when I discuss my point of view, that are you listening and willing to look at it and take it under consideration and go, just like you want me to, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's important for people, whether you're talking about, our democracy right now, or being able to sit down with your kids because there's conflict between brother and sister, right? I mean, to learn those skills at such a young age is so detriment or not detrimental, but so vital. that we learn those at a young age, so when we become adults and we start to kind of come into our own, we know how to handle those conflicts in the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we're always going to have that, and be subjected to conflicts. But even being able to have that open communication and being able to agree to disagree or to listen to to someone else's thought process and having that active listening skills, really truly sitting down, putting the social media aside, putting the phones aside, and having a conversation with our kids, that open communication, but actively listening to them. Are we listening to what they're saying? And the one way we can even show how we're doing that is to use I statements and say such things as, what I hear you saying is XYZ, and mirror that back to them. Because sometimes when we hear what someone else has heard us say, when we hear that reflected back to us, it makes things a little more clear. And maybe gives us a little different perspective of what maybe just had come out of our mouth. So even having that open communication, or that art of active listening, or even promoting emotional intelligence, asking the question, how does that make you feel? How does that make you feel? And
Yeah.
find good, bad, all right, and okay are not feeling terms. And we got to get back to true feeling terms. It makes me happy. It makes me stressed. It makes me sad. It makes me angry. It makes me frustrated. It makes me joyful. It makes me excited. It makes me feel like I'm successful, whatever the case may be. But actually thinking about what those feeling terms are and getting into the emotional intelligence. And where am I feeling that in my body? Am I feeling it in my chest, in my gut? Maybe I'm really stressed or frustrated or angry, and getting to where that is so we can become more in alignment of understanding our feelings, having that open communication, being able to teach conflict resolution, and even critical thinking skills. These are all things as parents, role models, and leaders we need to be incorporating in our lives and enhancing that to those with the lives around us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, being able to sit and be able to listen to somebody wholeheartedly and really kind of see their viewpoint, though it may not change your own viewpoint, and that is okay, but still being able to show respect and go, okay, man, great.
Yeah.
We have two different viewpoints, but it doesn't mean that we still can't be friends, because I think a lot of things end that, well, if you don't believe the way that I believe, then we can't be friends. And I don't necessarily believe that, because there's more to a person than just that one thing. Um, but being able just to sit and understand why people believe that the way they believe is important.
Yes, it is. And that brings me to a little bit of a reminder, and then we'll go on break. But leadership begins at home. It's what we're role modeling. It's what we're doing. It's what we're teaching. It's how we're feeling about ourselves, the things that we've talked about even in past shows. What can you control? And by embodying these particular qualities that we hope to see within ourselves, then we begin to pave the way for even our children to grow, to be healthier, to be wiser, to be more communicative, to be more emotionally intelligent, to be able to have those problem solving, critical thinking skills. And leadership is where it is. So, what are we watching? Who are we listening to? What are we listening to? And how are we developing ourselves and helping our children to grow and thrive? And you know what? With that, I'm going to give us another break, and we will be right back after this.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by all the stress, change, confusion, and chaos? You're not alone. Looking for real growth and transformation in your life? Welcome to the IAM Power Hour, your weekly burst of inspiration, transformation, and truth. Get inspired by real stories, explore current events and powerful tools to fuel your purpose. Ignite your potential and step into the extraordinary life you deserve. This isn't just another show, it's your weekly power-up for mind, body, and spirit. the IAM Power Hour with Terry and Stacie, because it's time to rise, lead, and own your power. Now on YouTube. Let's do this together.
Welcome back to the IAM Power Hour, where we have been discussing a very kind of hot topic right now, but we've been discussing when leaders bully and how we navigate parenting in this ever-changing world. And we really were touching on the dismantlement that our administration is taking on the Department of Education and how that is going to affect our kids, future leaders that we're looking at, and how overall the mindset that our president is, at least I believe, is in. I will say I believe is in kind of a really strong bullying state, and how it is affecting everybody, and what we can do to kind of help combat that, especially with our parents and their kids, of how to model desired behaviors and teach conflict resolution and promote emotional intelligence, are just some of the things that we touched on today, which I think, Terry, was wonderful. I know it was very eye-opening to me. I hope it was eye-opening to you.
I'm telling you, this was a big topic today. And it was a big thing that I felt like we really, really needed to get out there to understand what truly is bullying. We've talked about this and people have talked about it for years, but are we really recognizing that we are being bullied? Even in today's day and age, and then along with that, coming up with the leadership role model qualities, even for our children, having that active listening, the communication, the empathy, all of those things, the emotional intelligence, and being able to talk to one another again. But I go back, even Stacie, to one of the last shows, and I asked, what can you control? What is it you can control? And it is your response to anything. Those are the things you can control. Breaking it down into bite sizes is your thoughts, your words, your actions, and your emotions. So what are you thinking? What are you saying? How are you acting, and how are you feeling? Because it's time for us as leaders to enhance our unique skills and abilities, to pull together in the oneness that we are, because everyone belongs. And in the words of a dear friend of mine, everyone brings a piece of the puzzle together to the table to create a glorious picture. Are we allowing for that to happen? Or are we falling in the victim mindset of allowing for divisiveness and anger and chaos and confusion? Or are we bringing it back to being mindful together as a leader and helping our children to move through this as we learn to move through this, even within ourselves? So what I would love for people to do is to reflect and assess your behaviors and your attitudes, and strive for continuous LNT, learn new things, personal and professional growth and development. Participate in your children's lives in a positive way and foster open communication and trust. And with that, I think, we have really talked about when leaders bully and how to navigate our ways of being, thinking, and doing, and parenting our future leaders in this ever-changing world. So how can people contact us, Stacie?
Well, if you have something that's on your mind, you want to discuss maybe a prior topic we talked about, or even you want to discuss something that, hey, you want to hear on the show, you can always email us. We would love to hear from you. We want to hear your ideas, your viewpoints. Let's open up that communication. But you can contact us at iampowerhour@gmail.com. iampowerhour@gmail.com.
And I am so grateful that we had this show today. I'm so glad we had this time together. But you know what? Next week, I think we're going to talk about thriving in uncertain times. And so we're going to carry this on just a little bit further. What do you think? How do you think that feels?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a good one to kind of carry what we're talking about today into our next episode, because I think it's important to continue to establish, get into a routine of things are way uncertain. How can we be successful moving forward for not only ourselves, but our family, and hopefully this great nation of ours?
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Well, Stacie, I guess that's going to be a wrap for today's episode of the IAM Power Hour, where we talked about leaders, bullying, and how to navigate parenting in this ever-changing, chaotic world.
Well, we hope you're walking away with some inspiration and maybe even a new perspective.
And you know, we always want to hear from you, and you can find us at IamPowerHour@gmail.com. So until next time, keep shining, stay curious, and as always,
own your power.
Own your power. I love it. So we will see you next time on the IAM Power Hour.
All right, bye.
You have been watching the IAM Power Hour with your hosts, Terry J. Walker and Stacie Staton. You can email the show at IamPowerHour@gmail.com. Make sure you like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.